Margaret Atwood is one of Canada's most distinguished writers. As a novelist and a critic and an activist, she has arguably done more to put Canada on the literary map than any other author. While she's also an accomplished poet, it is her novels that have afforded her an international reputation. They include The Handmaid's Tale, Cat's Eye, and Alias Grace. This fall, she was awarded the 2000 Booker Prize for her latest novel, The Blind Assassin, and I am pleased to have her back on this program. Many people have talked about the bridge. 10 days after the war ended, my sister Laura drove a car off a bridge. The bridge was being repaired. She went right through the danger sign. The car fell 100 feet into the ravine, smashing through the treetops feathery with new leaves, then burst into flames and rolled down into the shallow creek at the bottom. Chunks of the bridge fell on top of it. Nothing much was left of her but charred smithereens. Tell me where this book springs from.
Well, the person telling it is an elderly woman of 82 years of age, and therefore she's been through most of the last century. It sounds very funny to say the last century, the one we just had.
Right. No, it does.
So the story of her life, in a way, takes us through that time period from the First World War, which was, you could say, the real beginning of the 20th century, up until roughly now. And so that's the time span. And she tells it from the vantage point of now. And she's going back and opening up a few locked trunks in her past that she's never opened up before. So she's telling the story of her sister who went off this bridge in 1945. And we hear about why the sister went off the bridge. And then we hear about what happened after the sister went off the bridge. And this is a family that was quite well-to-do before the Depression. And their family fortunes went down. And therefore she made what used to be called a dynastic marriage.
Yes, right.
And if you think that people didn't make those in the 20th century, you're quite wrong.
They did.
A lot of wealthy American families conducted themselves in the same way.
I know they did.
And so did English ones. You know, he had the castle, she had the money,
right.
Those kinds of arrangements. So then we hear that story.
Mothers who wanted their daughters to be at the right place.
The right place, or well taken care of.
Right.
Interwoven in that story is another story. So inside the story called The Blind Assassin, which you hold in your hands, there is another novel called The
Story
Blind
Within
Assassin.
a Story.
Yes, and then within that story, a man is telling his lover another story, which is about a blind assassin. So it's not just the story within the story, it's the story within the story within the story.
A novel begins for you with a story, a character, a place, what?
I think it begins usually with a character and quite often with an image. And sometimes the character or the image that it begins with disappears right out of the book. I always knew this was going to be about an elderly lady, and she always had a container. And inside the container there was always something. Yes, but at first she had a hat box. And inside the hat box were some letters. And I threw that out. Then she had a suitcase. And inside the suitcase there was a photograph album. That didn't last very long. That had to go out as well. And then, you see, it got bigger and bigger. She had a steamer trunk. And inside the steamer trunk is what you're going to find in this book, because that's what I ended up with.
Is that the way it is normally for you, in a sense?
Yes.
That you are searching for...
I'm searching for the way in, to the story. And, for instance, in Robber Bride, there was once a ceramic ashtray. And that disappeared, but it turned into a vase. So that's in the book now. In The Handmaid's Tale, I began it with the hanging scene right at the beginning of the book. That moved all the way back towards the back of it. So things rearrange. It's almost like rearranging.
Do you rearrange them after you finish? I mean, you finish your narrative and then go back?
No, not
or do
at
you,
all.
you might get a quarter way into your story and
then
figure
throw it
out
all out.
That this really belongs at the end and not at the beginning.
I might get a quarter way in and throw that out, or just think, this is not working, it goes in a drawer.
Yeah. What's the hardest part for you? I mean, I can imagine what's easiest for you. I can imagine from your gifts is that the sentence structure, all of that is easy for you, and character is easy for you.
Well, I think the hardest part is beginning.
Beginning.
And convincing yourself that this is actually going to go forward.
A tale worth telling.
Or that you have the stamina to keep at it. You know, I think that is really the hard part is, am I really going to do this day after day for the foreseeable future?
And is that a weighing of whether it interests me enough? Is this something I'm prepared to invest energy, time, a piece of my life?
No, I think you would call it terror. Or possibly...
Terror meaning, what's the fear, though? The fear...
The fear is that you will do it and it won't work. That's the fear.
In the end, it won't work.
That it won't work in the end.
Do you fear failure?
Everyone fears failure.
It hangs over all of us.
Of course.
And no matter how many books you write, no matter how many times they tell you how good you are, and no matter how many poems they love, and no matter how many stories that are powerful that you know you have done, you never feel that like you would think a smart athlete would feel. You know?
A smart athlete always feels terror. It's ones that aren't smart that don't feel that, because every game is a new game, every race is a new race, and every blank page is a new blank page.
And the unexpected is always there.
The unexpected is always there, and one of the unexpecteds is that you just may not be able to think of what comes next.
Do you really, you worry about that? You might get there and I can't take it any further.
That's right. That's happened.
Really?
Of course. Yes, I've
Have
started...
you abandoned a book halfway through?
Oh, several. More than halfway.
Man, that would kill me then. I mean, you know, you get halfway through? You've spent a year or two?
Oh, yes. Yes, that has certainly happened. They go off to book limbo, and they live in a drawer.
Yeah, right. But maybe they come back as a merge form somewhere, or they maybe come back as a chapter, or as
they might come back as a short story, or they might come back as a sentence.
As a sentence, yeah. All that 2 years becomes a sentence.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. But so, and how do you? Is it an agonizing decision to say, I've got no ending. I don't know where this goes, and it doesn't go anywhere that I think is worthy of going.
It's like, and I'm sure you've never had this happen in your entire life, but maybe a long time ago when you were young, you went out.
A long time ago when I was young, right?
Okay, a very short period of time.
A long time ago when I was young.
Yes, you may have been seeing quite a lot of some young lady.
Right.
But you may have come to the point where you sat down and you said, "This isn't going anywhere."
Right. It's fun, but it's not going anywhere. Assuming you had some
it may not even have been fun.
Well, I would have abandoned it long before then if it wasn't fun.
Then you're not a writer.
No, that's true. Well, let's explore that for a moment. I mean, you're not a writer, meaning that
we'll go on with things that aren't fun for quite a while until we realize they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And when you look back, are there any lessons to be learned, or is it simply trial and error?
It's trial and error.
I mean, in other words, the fact that, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the wrong voice. And sometimes it's the wrong time period. For instance, Alias Grace, which is the one before this, I started it in the third person. And I got about 100 pages into that. And then I was on a very fast train going to Paris. And two things happened at once. Number one, I got a terrible migraine headache. Number two, I realized I had to throw out that 100 pages.
Jeez.
Because it wasn't working. I couldn't tell it that way. I had to go back to the beginning, start again, and tell it from her point of view.
Is the fact that you are recognized for the talent that you are, does that create a level of expectation that makes it even more difficult for you?
Well, I think it makes me into a great big blimp. That people want to shoot darts at to see if they'll pop.
Show me a vulnerability, and they go, yeah, exactly right. No, that's true.
Yeah, and it's sort of a challenge, you know. It's I'm the giant, and somebody else wants to play Jack.
Yeah, exactly right. You know.
So there is that kind of thing, and we all know. I mean, I review books myself. We all know that if it's a new, promising writer, we think, oh, let's help them along, unless we're really vicious sadists, which some do exist. But usually, you think, let's help them along. This is an up-and-coming talent.
Yeah.
But if it's a great big old person like me...
Yeah. What makes her interesting is she might stumble.
Oh, it's always fun to see a person in a big fur coat slip on a banana peel. But it wouldn't be fun to see a small, tiny person in a coat with holes in it slip on a banana
exactly
peel.
Right. It's not the same.
No.
What is it that you have gained that makes it easier? Is there anything? I mean, what is the sheer value of experience?
Well, I know how to run a book tour better than I used to.
Oh, God, don't tell me. Yeah. Right.
So I know that a little bit better, but there again, the unexpected can always happen.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the book tour? Do you enjoy this process?
Yeah, I enjoy them a lot more than I used to because I know what to expect, and I know certain little things for making it run more easily.
Like what?
Like what? I travel with power bars.
Ah.
Or even
for energy.
Or Luna bars are even better.
Yeah.
That's a commercial. I like Luna bars.
Yeah.
You keep them in your bag.
I always find power bars taste like chalk.
They do. That's I shouldn't have said that. Never mind. Chalk something. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
But nonetheless, when you are stuck without having had any lunch, or you get back to the hotel room, it's really late at night, you can't face room service, you already know it's in the mini bar,
right.
You don't eat that. If you have a power bar, it'll get you through the night.
Yes, it will. If there's hunger pang, at least we'll take care of that. When you start this book, I mean, I want to talk more about Iris Chase and whether she's based on anybody you know, that kind of thing. I mean, where do you find the characters? Is it all in memory? Is it all in observation? Is it what?
Well, the places are usually real. The people are usually pastiche. That is, partly made up and partly what I've observed. But I have to tell you that several people have said to me, "This is my family." And I have said, "You must be joking." And they have said, "No."
Now, why is that?
And I have said, "Even Bad Richard." And they say, "I can take you to the club and introduce you to 4 Richards tonight." Or and I say, "Even Bad Winifred." And they say, "She's my aunt." So when you write a character that has some credibility, there will be a lot of people who will recognize that character, not because you know the same people they know, but because you've said something about human types or human nature.
Yeah, okay, but let me talk about that. That's a fascinating idea. What it is the notion of the power of the novelist's gift.
Yes.
Is to write characters that resonate in other people's experiences.
That's a very succinct way of putting it.
Yeah. Can you say it better?
No.
But it is true. But you say yes, and therefore it becomes meaningful, because the incisiveness of your observation through the description of the character, or through the life of the character, or the emotion of the character, somehow touches somebody's, and therefore it makes it a rich read for a reader.
Well, or they want to go with the story wherever it's going and become involved enough with it so that they want to go through to the end. Because let's face it, many more books are sold than are read.
Absolutely.
In a world, from a world point of view. So what you really are trying to do is write books that people will actually finish.
Is most of your experience secondhand, i.e. reading, film?
Is most of my experience
secondhand in terms of reading, because you read so much?
You know, most of everybody's experience these days is secondhand in that way, in that they see a lot of television,
right?
They see a lot of movies, they look at a lot of magazines, they read a lot of newspapers, but that is our window. Those are our windows on the world. So you could say an astronomer's experience is secondhand because he's only looking at the stars through a telescope.
Right.
It's still his experience. It's his experience of looking. Mm-hmm. So, on the other hand, you can't have lived this long, namely as long as I have lived,
right,
without having had some first-hand experiences.
Can you carry, from these experiences and from these observations, from what you look and see and absorb, and can you carry, are there plots circling around all the time? In other words,
have I got something on my mind?
Well, let me ask it in terms of personal reference. Throughout what I do is never far from the life I live. because it is always a sense of somehow there is something inside of me that says that's a great story. That's worth creating. If creating a television program is an act of creation, doing something with it. So every day, everything I see or do is fodder for.
It's very immediate.
Yeah.
Yes. The thing about writing a book is, by the time you've written it, and by the time it's been edited, and by the time it's been printed and turned into a book, you're already far away from it.
Yeah.
So there's always a divide, a certain divide between the person who has written it and the thing that other people are then reading. You're never right there. It's not like being an actor in a theater.
Right.
An actor in a theater, they do their acting and they get an immediate feedback from it.
Right.
The feedback
As
that you
does the
get
athlete.
is yeah, exactly. It's right there. It's immediate. Now, there are pleasures to that. It's right there.
Yeah.
And there are risks to that. If you fall on your face, everybody can see it.
Yeah.
And you're right there for them to see you doing it.
Just think about this. Somewhere all over Canada and the United States, there are people, because this has gotten so much attention, and they're just people who are, who are taking this and spending very, very, very satisfying hours with, in a sense, with you.
Well, by that time, it's not with me anymore. It's with the book.
And it is their experience with the book.
That's right. It's their experience with the book. Otherwise, Mr. Shakespeare would still have to be alive.
Yeah. Do you worry about the future of books?
I don't worry nearly so much about the future of books as other people seem to, because I've heard it all before.
Really? In other words, you go through this it's a cyclical kind of
cycle. Everybody says end of the book. Nobody will read anymore.
Television means the end of the book. Movies mean the end of the
novel,
books.
So and so and so
Computers
forth.
mean the end of the books.
Not true.
Because we are always, always, always in love with a story. Because that has been true before there were books and before there was a printing press.
Yes.
The idea of story has always been the most satisfying sort of experience.
Well, it seems to be a built-in part of being human.
Yeah.
We seem to be hardwired for stories.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Writing character, easy for you?
Not always.
Yeah.
No, nothing is easy for me always. There are always parts where you feel this is not going well.
Yeah.
This has to be done a different way.
Yeah.
And I write a lot of drafts. I go through it a lot of times.
Who do you show it to?
Don't show it to anybody until it's finished. And the reason for that is that I show it to somebody and I'm doing it. Number one, I'll lose energy because they'll say, what happens next? And like a fool, I will tell them instead of writing it.
Right.
And number two, what if they don't like it? Might stop me. And how can they know anyway?
And you should pursue with some purity your own vision.
That too.
Yeah.
Yes.
In other words, you shouldn't be contaminated by somebody else's, because if you start worrying about that kind of resonation, then
I'll stop.
You contaminate your work. Yeah.
Well, I don't think of other people as a contamination.
No, well, it could be. I mean, I think so. In other words, you can't be. You got to be true to your own drive.
Yeah. Well, what would my choices be? Okay, if I were going to show it to somebody, I would never show it to somebody in my family, because people in your family should be there to say, have some tea. They shouldn't be there to say, this is rotten, you've got to rewrite this chapter.
You always are writing about the social and cultural life within the time that you are writing.
Yes.
It's always a character in your books.
Yes.
Right?
It's true.
Does journalism interest you at all?
I've done it.
Does it interest you?
Does it interest me as something to do?
Yeah, to write nonfiction.
Yes. I write for newspapers.
Oh, you do?
Every once in a while.
Just with commentary, essays?
Commentary, usually. Yeah, usually commentary. Sometimes I do reviews, but sometimes I just do comment pieces. And usually they have a political hook to them, but they're usually about the arts.
Yeah. The relationship of politics to art.
You got it.
In other words, amount of government support, or amount of government censorship, or amount of government meddling, or
all those. Yeah, I've done all of those things.
Your own politics. What are your own politics?
My own politics are probably fairly indescribable.
Really?
But let me take a crack at them. I feel that I represent the politics of common sense. But on the other hand, my idea of common sense is other people's idea of bad behavior.
So what does that mean?
Well, let's see. Where shall we begin? Pick a topic.
Human rights.
Human rights. Okay. To me, human rights are about all human beings. And when people say, are you a feminist, I say feminism is part of human rights.
Right.
Or let us say equality.
Right.
Proper treatment of women is part of...
Yeah.
Don't say of course. A lot of people wouldn't agree with you. A lot of people want it off in a separate little square somewhere. And they want that treated separately from human rights because they don't include women in the category of human. So here we come to the crunch right away.
What would you do if you were not a writer?
What would I do if I were not a writer?
Would you repeat all my questions?
Yes, I would. If I weren't a writer of anything.
Yeah, no, if you weren't a writer. Would you teach, or would you be a...
Okay, if I hadn't
been
an
astronaut, or what?
If I hadn't been a writer, I would have been a scientist.
Really? I thought
I was
so.
on that path.
And you like science, fantasy, and fiction, too?
Yes, to a certain extent, but I also read a lot of science, just plain old, ordinary
like the human
science.
genome and all that kind of stuff?
Those kinds of things. My family are mostly scientists.
Yeah.
The dinner table conversations that we have are not for everyone. Not everyone wants to sit around eating their turkey talking about intestinal parasites.
No, I don't either.
No, well, my family, it's fine with them. That's what they will do.
Yeah.
Because they're scientists.
Yeah. This is the age of science.
To a certain extent, but I think a lot of science is either misunderstood or people just tune it out because they don't understand it.
No, I think it's the age of science because of the potential of science today. I mean, I think that the technology, the human genome, the mapping of the human genome was possible.
Yeah.
When they set out to do that, many people thought it wasn't possible. It'd take too long, wouldn't happen in 10 years. It happened much faster because of the access to supercomputers.
And also, a lot of people usually are working on the same problem at the same time. And it's their combined efforts that get these spectacular results.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's part of the problem in that there's such a competition among scientists that they never combine their efforts.
That's true of some, but others work in teams. They actually work in international teams, and they publish their papers, and other scientists can...
Tell me one thing you've always wanted to do that you haven't done.
Oh, that would get embarrassing. Well, let us say, I will never be a ballet dancer.
Yeah, but
alas.
You would have loved to have been able to have been a ballerina.
Without doing the work, sure.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to do
anybody
the work.
who has the commitment that you have to the quality of writing you do would have had the requisite commitment
but not
to be good. You may not have had the
necessarily
requisite talent.
You got it. And similarly, I will never be an opera singer. Too bad.
Yeah, but there are many opera singers who say, I could never write this well.
Possibly, but I think my point is that a lot of things you think you might like to have done, you actually were not equipped to do.
Yeah. Do you think, as I think about me, and how lucky you are to have found the thing that you should have been doing?
I think I was exceptionally lucky, and I found it at a very early age.
Yeah.
So I did not spend years wondering
Spending
what
around
to
trying
do.
to find out what it is that the match between gift and
yourself and what you're
interest.
doing, which a lot of people, in fact, never find. But it meant that although I had a lot of odd jobs, I always knew that my real job was something else, namely the writing. So I had those odd jobs in order to support the writing.
You're well on the way to another novel?
I've been on the road since the beginning of September.
Have you really been promoting since?
Well, the United States, Canada, Britain, Ireland, Sweden, Germany, Frankfurt Book Fair.
Now, where is it selling well?
all of those places.
All of those places? Sells
yeah.
well in England, Britain?
Very well.
Yeah. No,
yes, very well.
Do you notice differences where this book resonates in certain places and not at other places,
well,
no matter how much you promote it, no matter how many good reviews you get?
People will read it differently. But in fact, in all of the countries that I've mentioned, I already had quite a big readership. Yeah. And the book has gone very well in
well, the
those
Booker
countries.
Prize says something.
It certainly was an interesting moment. Well, I'll tell you, the interesting moment was when the man said, 3 times a bridesmaid, now a bride. And I thought, who's the groom?
Who is the blind assassin?
Well, now, I would never ever tell you such a thing as that.
I didn't think so.
Because there are several choices.
Yeah, but you can't blame me for asking.
Yeah,
can you?
the story within the book is a science fiction fantasy that the man is telling the woman to keep her interested in him. Men have a way of doing that. And it concerns a fictitious society in which there is a blind assassin. Somebody thought, oh, well, she's just making this up. But in fact, I got that bit of it, that children go blind from weaving carpets. I got it out of none other than the National Geographic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That they go blind?
Yeah,
I've
very
watched children weave carpets. Where was it? In Egypt.
Yeah, well, the very, very young ones. Actually, a child's eyes are not fully developed until they're about 6. And if they're doing that very, very close work with their tiny, weeny little fingers, it really seriously affects their eyes.
Well, Margaret Atwood, The Blind Assassin, Booker Prize 2000 winner. I'm pleased to have you here. Please come back.
And I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.